Good evening. I hope you had a good day. Please pull out your Cornell notes that you took earlier today. We're going to do properties of powers, and I want you to see how I use the properties of powers so that you can understand it better. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add and subtract uh, terms. So, for example, one, I have p to the third power plus 2p to the third power. One thing that you have to remember is that you cannot combine them unless they are like terms. So the bases are the same and the powers are the same. So they're like terms, so we can add the coefficients. That's the number in front of the variable. If we don't see a number, we have to assume it's 1. So I have 1 plus 2, which gives me 3. And then you just write the variable and the power. It stays the same. If I want to subtract, I have 25d to the fourth power minus 13d to the fourth power. The bases are the same and the powers are the same, so we can combine them. 25 minus 13 is 12. We keep the variable and the power. Now the next thing that we're going to do is called the product of a power. Product because we're going to multiply. So example 2, I have b to the second power times b to the fourth power. We're multiplying. That's where the product comes in because they're asking you to multiply. When that happens, all you have to do is add the powers. So I get 2 plus 4, which is 6. So the answer is b to the sixth power. All you have to do is add the powers. My next one is x to the 11th power times x to the 9th power. And again, all you have to do is add the powers. So 11 plus 9 is 20, so I get x to the 20th power. All you have to do is add. The next thing I'm going to do is called the power of a power. This is example 3. Now, when raising a term with a power to another power, all you have to do is multiply the power. So I have s to the third power times raised to the fifth power. S to the third power raised to the fifth power. Notice the parentheses. That's a way to help you recognize that you're going to multiply the exponents. So I have s to the 3 times 5. Multiply the powers. Whenever you're raising a power to a power, you multiply the powers. 3 times 5 is 15, so I get s to the 15th power. Another example is y to the 4th power raised to the 6th power. Remember, I'm raising a power to a power. I think I'm going to zoom in so you can see it better. Is that a little bit better? There you go. I like that one. Okay, so remember, when you're raising a power to a power, all you do is multiply the exponent. So I have 4 times 6, and 4 times 6 is 24. So the answer is y equals 24. The next thing I want to do is called the power of a product. Product is because you're going to be multiplying, or multiplication is implied, and then we're going to raise them all to a power. This is example 4, and I have 5c to the second power, d to the third power, and I'm raising it all to the third power. I decided to zoom in. That got a little blurry. So it's a product because this is 5 times c squared times d to the third power. And we're going to raise everything to a power. So the first thing you have to do is raise each factor in the term to the third power. So we get 5 to the third power, c to the, remember we need to multiply those powers, so c to the second times the 3, and d to the 3 times 3. It sounds complicated, but once you get used to it, it's very easy. So I'll get 5 to the third power. 2 times 3 is 6. So 6c to the 6th power. 3 times 3 is 9. So d to the 9th power. And then the last thing you do, raise your number, if you have one, to the power. So 5 to the third power is 125. C to the 6th power. D to the 9th power. There you go. The next thing I'm going to do is called the quotient of a power. It's quotient because you're going to be, it's going to be a fraction. You're going to be dividing. And the answer you get when you divide is, called the quotient. So it's called the quotient of a power. Now, when you have a fraction that has exponents or powers, all you have to do is subtract. So example 5, I have v to the 10th power divided by v to the 2nd power. Whenever you have a fraction, all you have to do is divide the powers. So what I get is v to the 10th minus 2. And then you subtract. So I'll get v to the 8th power. Another example, I have x to the 5th power divided by x. All you have to do is subtract the powers. So I have x to the 5th power. And since this is just x, we're going to assume that the power is 1. So minus 1. 5 minus 1 is 4. So the answer is x to the 4th power. We're almost finished. So the next one I'm going to do is called the power of a quotient. Now, again, because it's quotient, we're going to be dealing with a fraction. This is example 6. And now, your problem will look like this. It'll be a fraction, and again, we notice that it's going to be in parentheses. So I have x divided by y, all raised to the fourth power. Now to do this, all you have to do is raise the numerator to the power and then the denominator to the power. And that's all you have to do. So I have x to the fourth power divided by y to the fourth power. You raise it to the same power. Now, because they're not both x's or both y's, we can't subtract the powers. The answer stays like this. And that's okay. Now here's another example. I have x squared divided by y to the fourth power, all raised to the second power. So this is combining the power of a quotient and the power of a power. So remember, if it already has a power and you're raising it to a power, you need to multiply. So I'll get x to the 2 times 2 over y to the 4 times 2. And then we multiply. So 2 times 2 is 4, so I get x to the fourth power. And 4 times 2 is 8, so I'll get y to the 8th power. And again, because they're not the same basis, we can't subtract the powers. The answer just stays the same, stays like that. The next thing that I want to do is called the zero exponent. This is the easiest one of all. Now for the zero exponent, any number, no matter how big or how small, is when it's raised to the zero power, the answer is 1. It really doesn't matter. So I have example 7, and I have 9 to the 0 power. Any number raised to the 0 power is 1. My next one is, that's a fairly small number, so I'll use a larger number. So I have 12,342 raised to the 0 power. Any number raised to the 0 power is 1. It doesn't matter how big or how small. It doesn't matter if it's a variable. X to the 0 power is 1. It doesn't matter if we are doing the power of a quotient. So I have x divided by y, all raised to the 0 power. Any number raised to the 0 power is 1. So I get x to the 0 power divided by y to the 0 power. X to the 0 power is 1. Y to the 0 power is 1. And 1 divided by 1 is 1. Any number raised to the 0 power is 1. Now here's the last thing. This is called a negative power. Don't get nervous about this one. A lot of people are kind of scared of this. Negative power. But it's really very easy. This is my last example, example 8. When you have a number or a variable raised to the negative power, it doesn't say to make the number negative. All it tells you to do is make it a fraction. Find the reciprocal of the base and put it over, put a 1 and then write the base. That's all it is. All it wants you to do is make it a fraction. Now the opposite is true. If you're given the fraction, since we know that a negative power makes a fraction, we can rewrite it x to the negative 1 power. 1 because our power for x is 1. If I had 3, and it works with numbers, to the 3rd power, remember, all we need to do, all the negative says, is make it a fraction, and 1 is the numerator, and we put the 3 to the 3rd power as the denominator. Remember, take the reciprocal of the base. Notice when I did that, the power became positive. So all the negative tells us to do is to write it as a fraction. Now, because it is a number, we still need to write it in standard form. Okay? So 3 to the 3rd power is 27. So after you write it as a fraction, then you go ahead and raise the number to the power. And remember, when you write it as a fraction, our power becomes positive. Now I'll give you one more, and then your entrance ticket. I have 2x to the negative 2 power. Now, don't get mixed up. Notice the 2 does not have a negative power, just the x. So when this happens, you're still going to make a fraction, but our numerator will not be 1 this time because we have a coefficient. That becomes the numerator, and then we put this as our denominator with our positive power. There you go. So your entrance ticket is I need you to solve this. I have 4x to the 4th power. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. 4x to the 4th power divided by 2x to the 2nd power. Let's see what you can do. And then raise all of this to the 2nd power. Now, one hint. After you raise the 4 and the 2 to the 2nd power, you're going to be dividing those numbers. Remember the rules for raising a power to a power and then dealing with quotients. Okay, so that means you're going to be multiplying your powers and then subtracting. So do the numbers and the variables separately. Let's see what you can do with this. I'll go over it in class tomorrow in case you have trouble with it. Good night.